Hi there. In this week's edition of The Wrap, we're looking at FW de Klerk's death and legacy, the possible post-election coalitions, plus the big talking points from today's medium-term budget speech.
It's time for your weekly wrap of this week's top stories, brought to you by explain.co.za. Simple news summaries for busy people. Our take.
FW de Klerk has died. He was apartheid South Africa's final president and shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Nelson Mandela in 1993 for their roles in navigating the country towards democracy. Dave Stewart, spokesperson for the FW de Klerk Foundation, told News 24 today, quote, "The former president died earlier this morning at his home in Verashni in Cape Town after his struggle against cancer. He was 85 years old. He's survived by his wife Alita, two children, Susan and Jan, and his grandchildren," close quote. Now look, de Klerk was a divisive figure. Some have argued that without him, the relatively peaceful transition from apartheid to democracy would never have happened. He made himself unpopular with many members and supporters of the ruling National Party when, in 1990, he unbanned the ANC and other liberation organizations. Days after de Klerk's historic speech, Mandela was released from jail. It was the very public beginning of the end of formal apartheid. But as academic and author Professor Christie van der Westhuizen wrote for The Conversation Africa today, these actions, quote, should not be read as a Damascene conversion to the principle of black majority rule. Rather, the announcement was made by de Klerk, the pragmatist. He was taking a strategic risk to regain the initiative in a situation where the options beyond intensified military repression were rapidly shrinking, end quote. De Klerk was one of two deputy presidents to Mandela in 1994's Government of National Unity. The other was Thabo Mbeki, but left the post in 1996. He was heavily criticized for refusing to accept responsibility for brutal state crimes against anti-apartheid activists on his watch. He insisted he did not know about the atrocities. He also drew international ire by arguing before the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in the late 90s that apartheid was not a crime against humanity, a stance he reiterated several times, including as recently as last year. After his 1997 retirement from politics, de Klerk remained a public figure. He established the FW de Klerk Foundation and Center for Constitutional Rights and was a popular speaker at events both at home and abroad. News of de Klerk's death will no doubt elicit varied reactions from South Africans across the political spectrum, but his central role in our country's recent history, in all its complexity, cannot be denied.
The big story.
Our big story today is about the fallout from the elections. The local government elections are done, and most of you probably don't yet know who is running your city or town. That's because more than a quarter of all municipalities were hung with no clear majority, a first in our democratic history. Parties have been forced to the negotiating table to work out power-sharing deals. That's why so much election news may be confusing. No announcement about clear winners, just lots of rumors and conflicting reports about who is talking to whom. There will be more clarity after the 23rd of November, the deadline parties have been given to form power-sharing agreements. We will then tell you what's been finalized and what to make of it all. For now, here's a snapshot of a few major metros, starting with Johannesburg. Here, there was a lot of contestation. No party won a clear majority, not even close. The ANC got 33.6% of the vote, the DA 26.14%, and Action SA came into the fray with over 16% of the vote. It looked like Joburg voters were just not impressed. The ANC, the DA and the EFF all shrank in the city, while Joburgers seemed to remember their former mayor, Herman Mashaba, very fondly, giving him potential kingmaker status with that 16% of the vote. Who will govern the City of Gold? No two parties have enough to do so together except the DA and the ANC, which looks like a no-go. We told you last week that Helen Zille was keen for such a partnership, but John Steenhuisen has since come out as the leader of the party to say that that's not what their voters want from them. Mashaba, on the other hand, says he won't partner with the ANC, but is open to partnering with his ex-party, the DA, on certain conditions. A DA Action SA coalition in Joburg would still fall about 8% short of a majority and would have to work with smaller parties, including the EFF, which the DA has sworn not to do. Moving on to Cape Town, the DA of course won that city with 58.2% of the vote, but the party better watch out. It's won the city it's ruled for years, but fell sharply from its previously comfortable majority of 66.6%. That's over 8 percentage points difference from the last election. That kind of a drop should be a warning sign. The ANC saw a similar dip before losing outright control in other metros. The DA needs to be careful that it doesn't end up being pushed back to the opposition benches in the city of Cape Town. The ANC also shrank from 24.3% in the previous election to 18%, which is a huge drop for the party, while Patricia de Lille's good clearly ate into the DA support. A similar story to Johannesburg, where a former DA leader of colour left acrimoniously and went on to take votes from the Blue Party. The party has battled with issues of race, and losing black leaders looks like it has really cost the party directly in terms of losing votes. Good is not interested in coalitions. They've said constructive opposition is better than coalitions when trying to run a ward, and that's for the wards that they've contested in. In Tshwane or Pretoria, parties are also very evenly split. The ANC got just over 34% of the vote, the DA over 32%. So no two-party coalition would really work in the DA. Besides, again, the DA and the ANC, that's not looking very likely. So if that doesn't happen, it will take at least a three-party coalition to rule the Tshwane Metro with the EFF, FF Plus and Action SA, very possibly all three likely to play a significant role in what happens next, according to Times Live. So the game is on for these parties, and we'll see who actually has South Africa's interests at heart. As columnist Justice Malala points out, the people of South Africa have given no party a clear mandate to govern. The message is clear: have some humility, respect, and work with others.
The briefs.
What's next for the economy? Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana presented his maiden medium-term budget policy statement, otherwise known as the MTBPS, to Parliament today, and boy, he faced a lot of pressure to fulfill the promises made by his predecessor, amateur chef Tito Mboweni. Now remember, the MTBPS is more about policy and strategy than it is about numbers. It also follows a torrid 12 months of COVID-19, July's riots, and chronic load shedding. But take heart. The economy rebounded more positively over the past year than expected, a result of the global economy reopening and improved exports from our commodities and agricultural sectors. Things are not looking as bad as we thought they would thanks to the commodities boom we told you about last month. Here are three big issues from Godongwana's speech. Firstly, debt and GDP. Our debt levels are pretty high, but some recent estimates show that the economy could get some reprieve on the back of the commodities boom, plus the fact that a Stats SA review found that 2020 economy was 11% bigger than expected. GDP growth will also help us narrow the budget deficit, so Godongwana's announcement that GDP is expected to grow 5.1% this year, much higher than the February's forecast of 3.3%, is encouraging. We're looking for more growth prospects like these. Social grants, the basic income grant, otherwise known as BIG, is a big topic. Many households suffered financially due to the pandemic and unrest. Following those July protests, Mboweni announced the 350 Rand basic income grant would be extended to March next year. Look, it's very needed and makes a difference in people's lives, but the country's finances are already stretched, and economists say a long-term solution is needed to sustain the grant. The minister has said plans for the basic income grant will be outlined in the February budget, which is the big one that comes after this one. Another issue that's really come out of this budget is the state of our SOEs. Many of our state-owned enterprises are a mess. The priority, though, is, you guessed it, Eskom. The parastatal is over 400 billion rand in debt, and others like SAA, Denel, and Transnet are also in hot water. Godongwana announced today that National Treasury will try to avoid further bailouts to parastatals and will instead work on restructuring them and even letting go of some. And that's good news. We'll be watching these developments and keeping you updated. On to some Miss South Africa news. Lalela, listen to the people. Less than a month after being crowned Miss South Africa, Lalela Mswane is knee-deep in controversy. Walking away with the crown means she must represent the country at December's Miss Universe pageant. But Miss Universe is being hosted in Israel this year, and many South Africans are unhappy at the thought of our flag flying on an Israeli stage. The United Nations has labelled Israel an apartheid state on several occasions because of its illegal occupation of neighbouring Palestine and brutal attacks on often unarmed Palestinians. South African foreign policy recognises Palestine's independence. A number of pro-Palestinian organisations have called for Mswane to boycott Miss Universe to show her solidarity with Palestinians. Ms. Mswane has not personally made her stance clear on the issue, but the Miss South Africa organization, a private entity, says she intends to attend the pageant and insists that they as an organization are not involved in politics. A little rich, some argue, coming from a pageant whose 2021 contestants were asked to share their views on issues like trans women's representation, education policy, and gender-based violence during the finale. The organization's CEO also says a boycott would rob Mswane of her voice and not change much, adding that her attendance would be more impactful than a stay away. We're just not convinced. An app to speed up service delivery? With all this talk of local government elections, you're probably wondering if service delivery will get going in your neighborhood. How do you get that gaping pothole or broken streetlight fixed? Thanks to an app called My Smart City, you can now report such issues fairly easily. The app, introduced in July by a company called Acumen Software, allows you to report potholes, monitor power or water outages, and communicate with local municipal officials and more. It's integrated with the relevant city's call management system, though for now it's only available to those in the cities of Cape Town and Joburg. Now let's hope our freshly minted election officials ensure the app leads to action. Jeff Bezos, who takes turns with local boychi Elon Musk to be the world's richest man, has come out in support of planet Earth rather than space for a change. He pledged $2 billion to combat climate change and address food security and reforestation, among other commitments at Glasgow's COP26 conference happening at the moment. Will he stick to it? Bezos' pledge is one of many made to aid poorer countries, but history shows such promises often are not kept. A recent report showed that wealthy nations missed their 2012 promise to contribute $100 billion a year in aid to poorer nations. COP26 has been awash with generous pledges as pressure mounts on the wealthy, but activists are concerned about greenwashing. Lots of talk and no action. It ends tomorrow, so next week we'll tell you the news you need to know. A good week for gay rights. We love it when South Africans stand up for each other, so we were delighted to read that South African singer Kelly Khumalo said, "No homophobia on my watch," when her longtime friend, media personality Somizi, ran into some haters. Somizi is an openly gay man, a fact that saw churches in Harare, Zimbabwe block him from attending an event there. Khumalo was asked to come in his place but said no to the gig and defended Somizi. We're proud to see her standing up for gay rights and freedom, especially to other countries. Speaking of gay rights, KwaZulu-Natal's Umgeni local municipality is set to welcome South Africa's first openly gay mayor-elect. Chris Pappas, 30, won a majority for the DA in the region, a first for the Blue Party, and now he gets to be a rainbow first too. Pappas has been the DA's deputy provincial leader since 2021. He will be joined by 26-year-old Sandile Mnikati as deputy mayor, a really young start to becoming deputy mayor. Could cannabis be the right crop to mop up Gauteng's mine toxins? You might be aware that cannabis has many wonderful uses. Now South Africa scientists are exploring another potential application, sucking up pollutants from the many wastelands created around Gauteng by mining and other heavy industries, the Mail and Guardian reports. Activists have long warned about elevated levels of toxic and radioactive metals in parts of Joburg, given the city's mining history. Cannabis, meanwhile, has previously been proven to outperform other crops in its ability to suck up toxic metals. Why? 3 reasons: a rapid growth rate, high stress tolerance, and a long root system that can get deep into toxic soils. It's been put to test in the toughest of circumstances after the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Another environmental plus in cannabis's column is that it can also capture 22 tons of carbon dioxide per hectare, way better than any other crop. But the plant's reputation as a drug has slowed down research. We reckon it's high time, to change that. So we're glad to see these sort of studies being conducted. Finally, the kidnapped Motti brothers are safely home. Everyone who has followed the dramatic, harrowing story of the Motti brothers can breathe a sigh of relief. The boys have been safely returned to their parents. The 4 brothers, aged between 15 and 7, were kidnapped by 7 armed men while en route to Polokwane's Kuro, Heerville Crane Private School on the 21st of October. Anxious weeks have followed, with many South Africans rallying behind the family to offer prayers and support. On Wednesday night, the boys' parents received a phone call to collect their children, who, according to reports, arrived at a house in Vuwani, also in Limpopo, after being dropped off on a nearby road. Police have confirmed that the boys are in good health, but they're very tight-lipped on the details. They say revealing too much would compromise the investigation, and they're still hoping to make arrests.
We hope you enjoyed this news summary. Go to explain.co.za to subscribe for more.